The 3 trading milestones that finally made me consistent. Let me start with something that might genuinely bother you. Consistency in trading has almost nothing to do with finding the right strategy. I know, that's not what you want to hear. You've been watching videos, reading books, back-testing setups, tweaking your entries, adjusting your risk-reward ratios, and somewhere in the back of your mind, you still believe that the moment you find the setup, everything clicks. But here's what nobody tells you about that belief. It keeps you broke. Not because you're stupid, not because you're unlucky, but because it points you in exactly the wrong direction. You keep searching outside yourself for something that only lives inside you. I've been there. I've spent nights staring at charts, convinced that if I just understood one more indicator, if I just read one more book about price action, if I just found the right mentor, then I'd finally be consistent. The answer never came from any of those things. And if you're sitting here right now, months or maybe years into this trading journey, still feeling like you're chasing something you can't quite catch, I want you to hear this. You are not broken. You are not missing some secret. You are just at a stage that nobody warns you about. Stay with me, because what I'm about to share with you isn't a strategy. It's not a system. It's something far more powerful and far more uncomfortable. Here's the illusion the trading world sells you. Learn more, trade better. That's the promise. That's the entire model behind courses, mentorships, YouTube channels, trading communities. And it's not that knowledge is useless. Knowledge matters. But knowledge alone doesn't make you consistent. If it did, every trader who finished a course would become profitable. We both know that's not the case. The real problem isn't what you know. It's who you are when you sit down to trade. Think about it. You've probably had days where you knew exactly what the setup required, and you still deviated. You moved the stop. You took revenge trades. You sized up after a loss because you needed to make it back. In that moment, you had all the knowledge, but something else was driving the car. That something else is your psychology, your identity, the unconscious story you're telling yourself about what kind of trader you are. And that story, not your strategy, is what determines your results. Here's a thought that might stay with you longer than anything else in this video. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your identity. James Clear wrote that, but I felt it in my trading account before I ever read it in a book. So today, I want to walk you through the 3 specific milestones, not tips, not tactics, milestones that actually changed who I am as a trader. These aren't things I learned, they're things I became, and I believe they are the real line between the traders who make it and the ones who quietly give up and blame the market. Milestone 1. The day I stopped trading for money. I know how that sounds. You're trading to make money. That's the whole point. But hear me out. There's a version of trading where every trade is an audition, where you need this trade to prove something, to your account, to your ego, to the part of your brain that's scared. Where P&L isn't just a number, but a verdict on your worth as a person. That version of trading will destroy you. When I first started, every loss felt like a personal attack. Every winning streak made me feel invincible. My emotions were completely tied to my results, which meant my emotions were completely tied to something I only had partial control over. The market could do anything, and so my inner state could do anything, which meant my decisions could do anything. Old behavior? Opening a trade and immediately checking it every few minutes, feeling anxious, moving the stop loss just a little because the trade was almost stopped out. Taking profit too early because you were scared of losing what you had. Sizing up after a loss to recover faster. New behavior? Opening a trade and walking away. Not because you don't care, but because you've already decided before the trade opened, what you were willing to risk, what the setup required, and what your job was. Your job was to execute the plan. The market's job was to do whatever it wanted. The shift isn't passive, it's deeply active. It requires you to find something other than the money to be engaged with. For me, that thing became process. I started asking myself a different question at the end of each trading day. Not how much did I make, but did I trade like the trader I want to become? That question changed everything. Because now, even on a losing day, I could end the session feeling grounded if I executed well, managed risk properly, and stayed within my rules. And that emotional consistency started feeding back into my performance in ways I didn't expect. Here's the psychology behind this. When your brain is in a scarcity mindset, I need this trade to work, I need this money, it activates your threat response. Cortisol rises, decision-making degrades. You start making choices based on fear, not logic. You stop being a trader and start being a gambler who's rationalizing. But when you shift to a process mindset, my only job is to execute well, you remove the threat. Your prefrontal cortex stays online. You think clearly. You follow your rules. You accept losses as part of the job. Let me tell you about a guy I'll call Marcus. Marcus came to trading after losing his job during the pandemic. He had a family. He had pressure. He had a 3-month runway before savings ran out, and he was determined to make trading work. He was also one of the worst traders I've ever seen, not because he lacked skill, but because every single trade carried the weight of his family's survival. He couldn't take a clean loss. He couldn't sit out a bad week. He couldn't breathe. He eventually stepped back, got a part-time job, took the pressure off his account, and within 6 months, his trading completely transformed. Same strategy, same charts, different inner state, different results. The market didn't change. He changed. Imagine becoming a trader who isn't afraid of losing because you've already made peace with the cost of doing business. That's the first milestone. Stop trading for the money. Start trading for the craft. The money will follow, but only when you stop needing it to. Milestone 2. The day I made peace with being wrong. Drop a comment right now if this has happened to you. You see a setup, it looks good. You enter. Price immediately reverses. You get stopped out. Then, price goes back in the original direction and hits the target you had in mind. How does that feel? It feels like the market is personally against you, like something is specifically designed to take your money. And here's the danger. A lot of traders respond to that feeling by moving stops, widening entries, averaging into losing trades, all to avoid being wrong. But being wrong isn't the problem. Refusing to be wrong is the problem. This was my biggest prison for years. I was so afraid of being wrong that I would hold losing trades past my stop loss, telling myself the market would come back. Sometimes it did. That made things worse because it rewarded the behavior. I'd think, see, I just needed to be patient. But I wasn't being patient. I was being avoidant. I was protecting my ego at the expense of my account. Old behavior. Holding a losing trade past the stop loss because it'll come back. Widening the stop loss mid-trade. Adding to a losing position to lower the average entry. Closing winning trades early to lock in proof that you were right. New behavior. Honoring the stop. Every time, not because you don't care about the outcome, but because you care about something more important, your long-term edge, your consistency, your integrity as a trader. Here's the psychology. Humans are wired to avoid being wrong. It's not weakness, it's evolution. Being wrong in our ancestral environment carried real consequences, social rejection, loss of status, danger. so our brains learn to protect our sense of being right at almost any cost. In trading, that wiring costs you money. The traders who survive long enough to become consistent are the ones who rewire this response, who train themselves to be comfortable with being wrong on individual trades because they trust their edge over a large sample of trades. Think about a casino. The house doesn't win every hand. It doesn't need to. It has an edge. It plays consistently, and over thousands of hands, that edge plays out. The house never tilts. The house never deviates from its rules because of one bad night. You are the house, or you should be. He who is not courageous enough to take risks will accomplish nothing in life. Muhammad Ali. That quote lives in my trading journal, because every time I honor a stop loss, every time I take the small loss, I'm being courageous. I'm choosing the harder right over the easier wrong. There's a moment every consistent trader can point to, the moment they stopped trying to be right and started trying to be disciplined. For me, it was a Friday afternoon trade that I absolutely knew was going to work. I'd done the analysis. The setup was clean. I entered. Price moved against me. My stop was hit. I closed the laptop. I didn't move the stop. I didn't average down. I didn't watch the replay for 20 minutes to find out what happened. I took the loss and I was done for the day. That trade ended up being a loser. And that day was one of the most important days of my trading career, not because I won, but because I proved to myself that I could follow my rules even when it hurt. That's the internal milestone. That's the shift. Imagine becoming the kind of trader who takes losses cleanly, moves forward calmly, and never lets a single trade define your state of mind. That person exists. You're growing toward them right now. I want to pause here and tell you about a period in my trading life that I rarely talk about. It was about 18 months into my journey. I had learned a lot. I had a strategy that on paper back-tested well. I had rules. I had a journal. I had the tools. And I was losing money consistently. Not because the strategy was broken, not because the market was unfair, but because the person executing the strategy was broken. I remember one Tuesday. It was a Tuesday. I remember this clearly. I woke up, looked at my account, and felt nothing. Not panic, not anger, just a hollow, tired kind of silence. I had given back 3 weeks of gains in 4 days, and I sat there, coffee going cold, thinking, maybe I'm just not built for this. That thought is dangerous. Not because it might be true, but because it feels like a relief, like an exit, like permission to stop trying. I almost took that exit. Instead, I did something that felt pointless at the time. I pulled up 6 months of my trading history and just read it, not to analyze, not to look for patterns, just to read it like a diary. And what I saw shook me. I didn't have a strategy problem, I had a Tuesday problem. Every time I'd had a rough Monday, I came into Tuesday with something to prove, and every revenge trade I'd ever taken, every time I'd broken my rules, it was driven by one thing. I was trying to feel better through the market, and the market was billing me for it. That reading session, that quiet, uncomfortable hour of honesty with myself, was the beginning of the real change. I started keeping 2 journals, one for trades, one for me. The trade journal tracked entries, exits, R multiples. The personal journal tracked why I felt the urge to trade before a setup was ready. What was I avoiding? What was I chasing? What was the emotion underneath the impulse? Slowly, over months, I started to see myself clearly. And when you see yourself clearly, you can make different choices. I didn't become perfect. I still have off days, but I stopped being surprised by them. I stopped being controlled by them because I'd done the work of understanding the person behind the trades. That's the work nobody talks about. Not in the courses, not in the YouTube videos. The inner work. And if you've ever felt like you're fighting yourself at the chart, if you've ever done the exact thing you swore you wouldn't do, you're not alone. That's not failure. That's the process showing you exactly where to look next. Here's the thread running through all three of these milestones. None of them are about finding a better strategy. All of them are about becoming a different kind of person. And this is the thing that almost nobody in trading will tell you directly. Strategy is secondary to identity. You can give the same strategy to 10 different traders and get 10 completely different results because those 10 people have 10 different relationships with risk, with being wrong, with patience, with themselves. The question isn't, what should I be doing differently in my trades? The question is, who do I need to become in order to trade consistently? That question is harder. It requires honesty. It requires sitting with uncomfortable truths about your emotional patterns, your triggers, your ego. It requires looking at your trading journal and seeing yourself clearly, without excuses. But it's also the only question that leads anywhere real. Because here's what happens when you do that inner work. Your strategy starts to actually work, not because it changed, but because you changed. You're executing it properly now. You're letting trades breathe. You're honoring your stops. You're staying out when nothing qualifies. You're showing up tomorrow even after a rough day. That consistency, that identity is the edge. The market rewards the trader who has become someone worth rewarding, not someone who got lucky, not someone who found a secret, someone who put in the internal work that most people avoid. Quote, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit." End quote, Aristotle. You are building habits right now. Every trade is a vote for the kind of trader you're becoming. Every time you honor your rules, you vote for consistency. Every time you break them, you vote for chaos. Which direction are you voting? Before we get to the close, I want to ask you something real. Where are you right now in your trading journey? Not account size, not strategy, not how many courses you've taken. I mean, which of these 3 milestones is the one you're currently wrestling with? Is it the first one, that you're still too emotionally attached to the money and every loss feels personal? Is it the second one, that you're still afraid to be wrong, still moving stops, still holding losers longer than you should? Or is it the third one, that boredom and impulse are still winning more days than you'd like to admit? Drop a number in the comments, just 1, 2, or 3. I'm not asking to be performative. I'm asking because naming it is the first act of changing it. When you type that number, something shifts. You're no longer pretending, you're facing it. And facing it is everything. Also, if this video is giving you something real, something different from the usual trading content, consider subscribing, not to inflate my numbers, but because the conversation we're having here, this honest, identity-based approach to trading, it continues every week, and you don't want to miss the next one. Let me leave you with this. You are closer than you think. I know that can sound like something you're supposed to say to keep people watching, but I mean it specifically. Here's why. The fact that you're watching a video like this, one that challenges you to look inward instead of just hunt for better entries, tells me something about you. Most traders never get here. They cycle through strategies forever, chasing the system that doesn't exist, never once asking the harder questions. You're asking the harder questions. That's not nothing. That's actually everything. The path to consistency is not a straight line. There will be weeks where you feel like you've finally arrived, and then a rough session pulls the rug out and you're questioning everything again. That's not regression. That's the process. That's how deep change actually works. The trader you are becoming is patient with that process. They don't need every week to be profitable to feel like they're on track. They trust the compounding, not just of capital, but of discipline, of identity, of the habits they're quietly building every single day. Here's what I need you to hold on to when things get hard. The market doesn't owe you consistency. You earn it, trade by trade, rule by rule, day by day, by becoming the kind of person that deserves it. That's not a harsh truth. That's actually the most liberating thing I know, because it means it's within your control. It means the work you're doing right now, the reflection, the journaling, the uncomfortable honesty, it counts. Every day you show up and trade with integrity, you are becoming that trader. And one day, not because you found the perfect strategy, but because you became the right person, it will click. The consistency will be there, not as a gift, as a result. You've earned my respect just for staying till the end of this video. That kind of patience, that's already who you're becoming. If this video changed something in how you see yourself as a trader, even one small thing, then do this. Subscribe right now, not as a favor to me, as a commitment to yourself. Because the next video in this series goes even deeper into the specific daily habits that anchor the identity we talked about today. The journal prompts, the pre-session routine, the recovery process after a bad week. If you subscribe, you'll get that when it drops. If you don't, the algorithm might never show it to you again. This is a community built for traders who are serious about the inner game. Not hype, not signals, not look at my trades, just honest, grounded, identity-based growth. Hit subscribe, hit the bell, and I'll see you in the next one.